So, good afternoon, everybody. Um, Good to see you. Thanks for joining to the call. Expecting a bigger crowd than usual as well, just because of the topic, the subject. Kevin, thanks for being here again
Thank you all.
with us. And um, just give us a quick background about yourself once again to those who didn't get to meet you last time. Kevin, then we're gonna open up.
Great, thank you. If you don't mind giving me privileges to share my screen, I'll do a quick about us screen share for those who don't know about elevated entitlements.
There you go.
Perfect. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
Hello, meeting.
Oh, I'll jump on.
SB9, SB10.
Oh, see.
I'm gonna make sure to mute everybody. So give me a second over here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, great. So hi, everyone again. My name is 𝐑𝐞𝐚𝐜𝐡. I'm with Elevated Entitlements. I had the pleasure of presenting in front of your group at our last luncheon presentation. Our firm, Elevated Entitlements, we service developers, municipal clients, and agencies through the entitlement review process. This page is a little bit about us and who we are. We're a planning firm. We focus on land use, city planning, and entitlement areas. We have experience both private and government agencies representing cities as an extension of staff, and also representing private developers and agents like yourself who are having a site that they want to develop and understand what the permitting and zoning is on that property to move forward with their development. We work with also environmental resource agencies. Some of them listed here are Army Corps of Engineers, Regional Water Quality Control Board, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. If you're ever working on a property that is in a very environmental constrained area, you have to work with these agencies, and we can help you through that entitlement review process. Today, I'm going to be talking about some new legislation that was recently passed by Governor Newsom. This was historic legislation that is helping to supply more housing against the fight of the housing crisis that we are currently in. So going into what this new legislation is, it's under 3 Senate bills, Senate Bill 8, 9, and 10. And 8, 9, and 10 were passed to help lead over 84,000 new housing units. And this is setting aside $1.75 billion for affordable housing. SB 8, the first bill, is extending the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, which is already in full effect. SB 9 is a new program that is highly critical and important for many cities. It gives homeowners additional tools to add critically needed new housing and help ease California housing shortages. So I'll go into what those tools are. And then SB 10 is a voluntary action. Voluntary means the city does not have to abide by these county or state standards, but this is a voluntary action that will allow for multi-unit housing near transit corridors. So I'll walk you through each Senate Bill 9 and 10 and give you just a high-level overview of these bills. So Senate Bill 9. Senate Bill 9 says if you have a single-family home, you can do a lot split on that single-family home by right, at least 1,200 square feet minimum, and you can do a duplex on each of those lots. So a lot split can occur to have 2 separate lot sizes with duplex on each lot for a total of 4 units. So you have one single family parcel that now has opportunity to be 4 units instead of just one unit. Now, Senate Bill 10, I'm sorry, let's go over just a key takeaways from SB 9. So SB 9 applies to all counties and cities. So this is a state mandate. Cities can't push back on this mandate. This is regulated by the state. And this program is with single family home and residential zones only. The parcel must be considered an urbanized area. So this is within cities that have already an established single family community. We talked about the right to do a lot split to 2 parcels, and each lot must be at least 1,200 square feet in total size. Now, there's some caveats of what can and cannot happen. The project cannot demolish more than 25% of the existing structural walls of the structure on site of the single family home. And the proposed project property split cannot result to alteration or demolition of any affordable units currently on site, a market rate housing that's been occupied by a tenant more than 3 years, if the property is designated as a historical landmark or is located within a historical district, and any unit created as a result of the lot split cannot be used for short-term rental and must be rented for a term longer than 30 days. And finally, property owners who have signed an affidavit stating that they will occupy one of the housing units must reside in the primary residence for at least 3 years after splitting the property. Now, a lot of this new terms and discussion is pushed back with some controversy on how is this going to be regulated by the state, and that is yet to be determined of how they're going to know if the term of these short-term rentals and how long this primary residence will be maintained by the property owner. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with individual cities. Next is Senate Bill 10. So Senate Bill 10 says if you have a single family or residential lot within a transit corridor or near a high transit area, we will allow you to rezone the property without any environmental review. So the California Environmental Quality Act, it goes out the window. You don't need to prepare an initial study, a mitigating negative declaration or EIR. You can go past this environmental review process, which can save up to 1 year to 2 years on your entitlement permitting process. And then what Senate Bill 10 says is after you get through that environmental clearance or exemption, we will allow you to go up to 10 units on that single family lot if you're near a transit center. So this is a big improvement. Now, the caveat to this, that this is a voluntary process, meaning cities don't have to abide by this mandate. Whereas Senate Bill 9 is a state mandate, Senate Bill 10 is not mandated by the state, and it gives a discretion to the cities to either adopt this or not adopt this. So that is one caveat that we will see how cities react to this and if they're going to be supportive of this process or not. So again, it allows a more streamlining zoning process for multi-unit housing near transit and urban areas and up to 10 units per parcel. It allows you to be exempt from CEQA, so no environmental review process. And again, this is a voluntary action that each city will have mandated to go through this process. Now, SB 10 has attracted, of course, much less opposition because of the voluntary action, but SB 9 has received opposition because of concerns of change in single family neighborhood character and living. So all this has been recently adopted within the last month. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But wanted to bring to you just the latest news and updates to your team and open up to questions.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting ride for sure. Thanks for putting this together in such a short time, Kevin. Let's open up for questions. If you don't mind, just to go back to the initial slide when you show all the different bills. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Question.
So, Sam, go for it. Like open mic, guys. If you have questions for Kevin or in general, that's the time to kind of to have that discussion.
So Kevin, John, question I have on SB 9, the tenant, the landlord is pretty much is the tenant of one of the 4 units. What about SB 10?
So SB 10, you don't need to be a landlord or tenant on site for more than 3 years. So it's similar to the TOC program. You can convert a single family home to a multifamily up to 10 units and rent it out at market rate, or you can include affordable units within that program and get additional density bonus, similar to the TOC program. And now this is throughout California not just Los Angeles.
Okay. What about parking requirements for SB9?
So that's a good question. SB9 allows off-site parking to fulfill
Wow.
the lot split. So parking does not need to be totally provided on site.
Okay.
So parking garage or a carport does not need to be provided. Off-site parking would be permitted for SB9.
So the minimum lot requirement is 2,400 square feet? Is
It's
that what?
1,200. So 1,200
No.
square feet in size.
For each
Is
lot?
for each lot. So 2,400 minimum lot size,
Yeah,
correct?
exactly. Yes. Okay.
That's correct.
And SB10 parking requirement?
Same. SB10 allows off-site parking, and they're relying you to be near a transit center to have most of your residents using public transit rather than using automobiles or parking on site. So they're allowing off-street parking and public transit to fulfill a lot of the reduction in parking standards.
How far do you have to be from a transit?
I have to look at the language, but I believe it's within 1,000 feet of a public transit
Radius.
1,000-foot radius. Yep.
Okay,
And this
thank
doesn't
you.
go into effect for a while, or it's in effect? I think it's not going into effect for a while, right?
It hasn't been effective immediately. Again, SB10 needs to be looked at from each city. So each city will either adopt this ordinance or not, just like the ADU ordinance. But the SB9 program will become effective, I believe, starting the new year of January 1st.
Wow.
So a lot of changes coming with this new housing legislation. You've seen it already with the ADU ordinance and allowing ADUs on site. You're seeing it with the TOC program locally in Los Angeles. And now there's more pressure from the state to change, upzone a lot of these single family units within California.
And there's no variance. There's no variance.
No variance required. It's a ministerial approval. Does not require planning commission hearing, public hearing.
So you can
So
build the 4 units.
It's going to streamline the process.
You can build the 4 units in the flats of Beverly Hills, and your neighbor can't say nothing. The city can't say nothing.
And right now, city's hands are tied. And City of Beverly
Wow.
Hills, my community, Thousand Oaks, they've raised concerns of uproar and sent letters to the state saying we don't agree with this. But right now, cities must be mandated to adhere to these conditions. And let's see how it plays out. I'm sure there's going to be lawsuits that are going to come down. But right now, the state has full effect that supersedes local jurisdiction.
What about Coastal Commission?
Supersedes Coastal Commission as well.
Wow.
So
That is-
Coastal Commission is just a supportive agency to the state.
And that's interesting, by the way, Kevin, because there's going to be a lot of pushback and discussion on the residential point of view. Mostly those big lots, very expensive luxury single family homes, right? Those
Right.
big lots, whatever, like 25 mil house in Beverly Hills or Calabasas or
Yep.
whatever.
Mhm.
So that's going to be a very interesting twist.
They're going to have 4 units next to a McMansion next door. And how does that affect the neighborhood look and feel of the area? So it's going to be a very controversial program that has a lot of pushback from these local municipalities. So we have time till January 1st to see what happens, but it'd be interesting just to watch these changes from the governor and how it's been effective. Just recently with the governor passing law that each city look at their RHNA standards, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, to make sure they're providing affordable housing within their community. City of, I believe it was Huntington Beach, had pushed back to the governor saying, we do not want to provide affordable housing. We want to provide less housing to the area and preserve the beach community. The governor sued the city of Huntington Beach and set a precedent that they need to either abide by the law or we're going to put legal pressure on the city. So the state is taking this seriously, and it's going to be interesting to see how the cities follow.
Now,
So-
once you subdivide the lot, let's say 3 years down the line, can you sell the lot separately as a duplex, or you cannot?
So from my understanding, you can sell the property at a later time. You have to hold the property for a certain time until it becomes able to be rented or sold to another individual. So the language that I was able to pull from the bill says here that number one, you cannot be used for a short-term rental, and it must be rented for a longer term than 30 days. That's for short-term rental. And for property owners, they must have at least 3 years residing in the primary residence while using the other units for market rate or affordable housing. Now, the question you have is, at a later time, once I finish my 3 years living in that primary residence, can I sell the other lot? My understanding is you can, but I don't have the specific language from the bill yet that provides that further detail on what those terms are.
Kevin, can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
SB10, you're saying that on a single lot, I can make up to 10 units.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that after going over 4 units, we're going to do a subdivision map act, right? For like a condos. So in other words, on a single lot, I can build 10 condos or townhouses and then sell them separately.
That's correct. You can do a condo conversion. You can do a small lot subdivision up to 10 units, or you can do a multi-family apartment project to 10 units and then do a condo conversion at a later time. There's different routes as a developer you can use to maximize the 10 units.
Now the question is, if I were to go with 10 multifamily, then do I need to meet the parking requirements?
So that was a question that Sam asked. The purpose of SB10 is, the key thing is you have to be within 1,000 feet of a public transit. So you're telling the state that I'm within 1,000 feet of public transit. Most of my tenants or property owners are going to be using the public transit. And if they do have parking, most of them will be met with offsite parking or street parking. So there is going to be a minimum parking standard on site, which has not been shared with the bill yet. But the idea is there'd be a reduction of parking on site due to being within 1,000 feet of a public transit.
And is there a particular map to show that my imaginary lot is within the 1,000 feet or not? Or
so this
what if half of it is? I mean,
yeah, that's
right?
a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. So SB10 is a voluntary process, meaning the cities will voluntarily adopt this ordinance if they so want it in their city. So this is not a guarantee. If City of Beverly Hills or City of Pasadena says, we don't want this bill and we don't support it, they don't have to volunteer and use the service. However, if there's a city such as Burbank that wants to use this ordinance and state bill, they're gonna provide a map or service that shows those properties within 1,000 feet that could qualify for this bill.
Kevin, my last question is that, has the city of Los Angeles adopted this?
From my understanding, they're supportive of this, and they already have a program in place called Transit-Oriented Community, TOC, that's very similar to this process. What this would do is it would look at other cities, just not only of Los Angeles, but cities outside of Los Angeles. So it could be LA County jurisdiction. It can look at portions of outside of City of Los Angeles. So right now, City of Los Angeles does have a similar program called the Transit-Oriented Community Program.
Thank you.
That's under TOC4, correct?
Yes, the TOC program has 4
something
tiers.
Similar to a TOC4?
This would be similar, but the reality is the TOC program actually provides more density, up to 80%, whereas this is limiting to only 10 units per parcel. So actually the City of LA
No, I'm just talking about the distance wise.
Oh, distance wise, it's
distance wise
500 feet for TOC tier 4.
Okay, I got you.
Kevin, I got a bunch of questions for you. This is Omid. How are you?
Hey, Omid, good to hear from you.
All right, number one question. As we're talking about this TOC and the 10 units, can someone hypothetically take SB9 and 10 on the same property and build 20 units?
That's a good question. If you can do a layered approach, I'm not sure if that's possible. That's something I can look into and get back to you.
Okay.
If the city determines, yes, we want SB9 and 10, and you want to do a layered approach, I'm not sure how that would work, because SB9 is doing a lot split and doing up to 4 units, whereas SB10 is just with or without a lot split, you're allowed 10 units. But that's a good question. I mean, I can write that down and get back to you with an answer after doing some more research.
All right, yeah, so that's number question. And number two, I know with TOC, the time frame on that's like 1.5 years right now to get approval.
Correct. Yeah.
Do we know any kind of estimated time frame that they're giving us right now on 10? Not 9 is, I mean, 9 and 10, I guess, in that way, because for the lot split, you got to get their approval as well.
So SB9 is ministerial, meaning you don't need any planning commission hearing. You don't need any public hearing or discretionary action. You go right to pulling your permits. So it's likely going to be weeks or months rather than years to go through this process. SB10, if it is adopted by a city, again, you don't need to go through any environmental review period. So instead of 1 year, 2 years, like a TOC program to go through CEQA, that goes out the window. And instead you go right to a ministerial action to allowing you to proceed with building permits for 10 units. So both of these programs are going to streamline it to more to weeks and months rather than years that the state currently is, or City of Los Angeles currently has with the TOC program.
Okay, got it. And then for SB9, are you only limited to 1 lot split, or can you do multiple lot splits if you have a big parcel?
So you're only limited to a split to 2 parcels with a minimum of 1,200 square feet.
Okay,
So
and then do you
can't do
have
more
to
than
do,
2.
Do you have to do 2 units on the other parcel, or are you able to do 1 large single family on that parcel?
You can do 1 large as well. Up to 2 is what is allotted through this program. So you can do a duplex, but if you want just a single family home, that is possible as well.
Okay, and then what about for easements on the sides and the back and all that? Are they waiving those? Are they changing those? Are they still 5 feet?
So you still will have to meet city code standards for easements. So depending on what the single family zone you fall in, you will need to meet height, setbacks, lot coverage, all the city code standards.
Okay.
Do you think they're gonna restrict those even more, or just keep them as it is? Because it's gonna be a very challenging lot. Let's say you have 1,200 square feet.
Yeah, you can be challenged on how big of a home you can build given those restrictions. That's a great question. I think largely it's going to be up to the local municipality to determine if they are supporting of this legislation, working with the new legislation to maybe give deviations or lessen the setbacks or lot coverage, or increase the lot coverage to allow for more buildable area.
And from what you remember right now, top of your head, when you have 1,200 square feet, what can you build on that kind of a lot if it's the very minimum?
So it's depending on the zoning. So for example, if you have a 1,200 square foot lot and you're in the R1 zone may say you must have a 800 square foot dwelling unit minimum. It's all dependent on what the local jurisdiction adopts for that code requirement. So if the local jurisdiction says in a single family zone, your minimum lot size or minimum unit size can be 800 square feet, that is the total buildable area that you can do on a 1,200 square foot lot. So
what about height limits?
So height is restricted by the underlying zoning as well. So if the R1 zone says 35-foot height, that's 2 stories, that's your limit. It's all dependent on the local jurisdiction.
Got it.
So that's a great point. There's a caveat, right? even though they're giving you this incentive, you still need to meet the city's underlying zoning requirements.
And that's why most likely they went up to 4 units. So if you do have that, if you go by the minimum, just to understand the concept, if you have one lot, 2,400, let's say, and you split into half, now it's 1,200 each. So you can build basically 2-floor duplex on each, but they're
Right.
very small units.
Right. And this is kind of a conceptual rendering of what the
there you go.
idea was. So you have a single family lot, you're splitting that single family lot into 2 at least 1,200 minimum square foot lots with duplex on each. So you can see just the scale and the building massing has changed that for that single family neighborhood.
Okay. And Kevin, this only SB9 and 10, they only apply to R1 zone land, correct?
That's correct. Only single family zoning, residential zone.
Okay, so if we have an R2, R3, we're not able to go ahead and
No,
finagle
just
that
single
one.
family
Okay,
home. Mhm.
got it. Wow.
That's that's maybe 20 years from now, the next fight.
Yeah, that's probably the next fight.
Kevin, can one person own more than few fourplexes, or they can only own one?
One primary residence must be occupied. Was that your question? If the primary
Yes.
owner that's doing the lot split, they need to live in at least one of the residents.
I understand, but let's say Kevin Cohen wants to do 10 different projects in 10 different cities.
Oh,
Is
I
he
see.
allowed to do that?
That's a great question. I will have to look at that. I assume you can if you own multiple properties, but it's not you living in it. It's a family member or your wife living in another property, however it be, that they would allow such to happen if you own more than one parcel. I can write that question down to come back to you with an answer.
Yes, and also, let's say if you just keep it vacant, would that pass?
So you do the lot split and you build a duplex, but you leave one of the units vacant.
Yes.
There,
Obviously, you can't.
Yeah, I'm
you
sure
cannot
there's
live in
some
10
type
of them.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some type of language in the code there that restricts. There's probably a time period and restricting it to a affordable unit or restricting it for a time period that it must be rented or purchased. I'll look at some specific language within the Senate bill to share with you.
Kevin, going back to entity holding, does it have to be under a single person, or are they allowing for LLCs to hold title for these R1s?
That's a good question. I assume the entity, if it's an LLC or S corp, that would be acceptable as well. But that's another technical question that I'll need to get back to you on.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm trying to figure out how they're going to prove that you're living there if it's being held under an LLC.
That's right. I mean, a lot of these things are ambiguous. I mean, how are they going to know that you're, like, for example, the short-term rental, it must be rented for no longer than 30 days. How are they going to track that? I don't know. How are they going to track that you're occupying one of the residents for at least 3 years? I don't know. I don't know how the state is going to be policing this. So these are all questions that are kind of yet to be determined.
Yep. Okay, cool.
So those are good questions.
Kevin, you had a rendering of the lot with a house and some units. The house on the very front, like the left-hand side, is it supposedly the original primary place of resident, and the guy has built 3 other units behind it?
No. So what this graphic is showing is just say this is a residential street. These are 4 homes on the residential street. The area of focus is the blue roof home. So if I'm the owner of this home, I'm a single family homeowner, I want to do a lot split, and I'm doing now 2 separate lots with a duplex on each lot with a total of now 4 units. So that's what this graphic was showing, just a simplification of the code.
And you have to live in one of the units for a minimum of 3 years.
Minimum of 3 years, correct.
And after that, you can rent it out?
That's correct. After that, you can rent out that unit.
So in other words, you have to knock down the whole house, the whole structure there.
That's
But
correct.
I thought you said you can't do that.
You can either demolish your whole home, or if you have a home with enough of a lot area to allow for a lot split to keep your home and add another duplex, that's a possibility as well.
Okay, thank you.
So it's all dependent on your lot size.
All right.
So of course, the larger the lot, the more opportunity you have.
Yes, but you still have the option, if you wanted to, demolish the original house totally and build like 2, 4, whatever units.
That's correct. But the caveat is the house cannot be a historical home. The
Naturally,
city limits that.
Mhm.
And there was some other language here that applies as well.
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Kevin, because I haven't asked enough questions yet.
That's okay. These are all good questions.
So earlier you said that once you do a lot split, in 3 years, you're most probably going to be able to sell one of those pieces off and hold on to the other one or whatever you want to do, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Are they going to have anything on title, on the deed, on anything that states that one that you just sold, let's say the lot's big enough to be able to split it again? Is there going to be any kind of regulation against doing that? Or is that not just done?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something also I'll need to look into, but I'm sure there's a limitation on how many times that split can happen. I'm sure there's some code specifics that I can dig into to find that answer.
Okay. Cool.
Kevin,
Comment
the
from
lots-
Michael Cochette, asking, or you can talk yourself directly, Michael. Wonder how the city will react to larger developments. Do you want to explain that?
My thought process behind that is like this. You have a large single family zone parcel, you know, and they're going to have we all know developers are going to run at this. Do you feel that by a specific city, we'll just use, you know, Malibu as an example, that's behind on their requirements of providing rental housing? If they approve, say, 2 new projects, would that ease the pressure on them to approve SB9s and 10s, for example, if they start approving these larger developments?
In general? So that's a great question, Michael. So in general, SB9, what it's intended to do is provide more surplus to the market, right? More housing to the market, and more housing at a more affordable price and building topology. Not everybody wants a single family home. So if you're offering duplexes and some of these smaller townhomes, it may be more of an entry level type of housing for the young professionals or young generation coming to buy their first home. But the question you had was, if the city moves forward with starting to process these projects quicker, does that ease the pressure from
these, for example, but you know, here you have a developer that goes into Malibu and they say, hey, we want to build 200 units and you guys are behind on your annual requirements, right, of providing housing.
Your RENA standards, right?
Yeah, and so they say, no, we don't want to do it now. That was a year ago. Here we just get this approved. Do you feel that those cities, those councils, will be a little bit more under pressure to approve the nicer, bigger, larger projects and provide and say, look, we've approved 200 units here. We have these 5 shitty applications for 9 and 10, you know, and we approved it. Do you feel that that's going to relieve a little bit of pressure on that specific city council to say, like, look, we get you've approved this, but we've approved this by providing, instead of 10 duplexes, we approved 200 units.
Right. At the end of the day, yes, there's pressure, and there's pressure to meet the regional housing needs assessment, which is RENA, and they have to meet a quota end of the year of X amount of housing supply for the city. So by approving these larger projects, yes, they're more incentivized to wanting to approve these larger projects because they're able to meet their housing RENA standards. And the caveat of that as well is these larger housing projects will need to provide some affordability to their project so that they meet some of the city meets their affordability standards as well that is required by the state. So I do agree with you, Michael. I think there is going to be more political pressure on council and city staff to be more willing to allow these larger projects to proceed through entitlement process faster in order to help alleviate some of the pressure from the state that they're not meeting their RENA standards.
So you feel that at this point, since this is passed, it will kind of put a little pressure on each city in a sense that, say, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years backlogged on their requirements to approve those larger ones, opposed to approving a bunch of these smaller ones and pissing off the neighbors.
It's a balance of both, right? Because also the SB9 is something that these cities are going to have to adhere to. So they can't just leave those applications at the wayside either. They're going to have to push those forward as a ministerial application. But the larger projects are going forward not as ministerial. They're being reviewed by the Planning Commission, City Council, which is a lengthier process. These ministerial projects like SB9 don't even go to the Planning Commission for review. They go right to the planning counter, stamp your plans, do your lot split.
Question to you, do the 9 and 10s, those unit counts, does that count under the RENA? It does, right?
Yes, SB 9 and 10 is an incentive to encourage cities to get more housing supply to count towards the RENA standard.
So we'll put pressure on them to approve. The
Definitely.
local projects.
So I'm a contract planner for City of Ventura Hills. We have a project that's been in the development review process for 4 years, 196 units. 4 years it's been sitting at the city, back and forth the developer. Finally, within this last year, they're getting a lot of political pressure to move the project forward, and the developer, the client or applicant is using the state mandate to help put pressure on these cities to move it forward. So you're starting to see some change, and these kind of slow growth communities are changing to meet the state mandate.
That's great. That's music to my ears. That's beautiful.
Kevin, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Let's say a typical lot is usually 7,500, you know, I mean, give or take. And if you divide that by 4, right? 4 is the maximum for SB9.
It'd be 7,500 divided by 2 for the lot split. And then on each lot, you can do 2 units, the duplex.
Okay, so the lot split, no matter what size of the lot is only going to be 2 units for SB9, right? I mean, 2 lots.
2 lots, correct, with a minimum of 1,200 square feet.
I see. And would these lots have different parcel numbers? And
so once you do a lot split, it has to adhere to the Subdivision Map Act.
Yes.
And it would be given a new legal description, new parcel number. It would be a legal lot line, legal parcel.
New street address.
New street address, correct. It would be maybe a unit. It would be a, let's say it's an address with an A or B added to it to represent the duplex number.
Right. So in other words, one could take a 5,000 or 6,000-7,000 square feet lot, split it, and build two separate duplexes on each.
That's correct.
Have no parking standards.
Parking is met off street. Yep. You don't need to
Okay.
provide a parking
Okay.
carport or garage.
And no restrictions on selling it at that time, correct? Because
So there's some caveats that you can see here on the screen on how long you have to be owning the property is up to 3 years. So you have to reside as a owner of the primary residence for up to 3 years before you either sell that unit or rent that unit out to another person.
We did the lot split. We built 2 duplexes, and I live in one duplex. I've rented the one above me, and the other one, which is another 2 duplex unit. Can I sell that?
Yes, yeah, that's the goal, that you're providing more supply. Housing
But
supply.
I cannot sell mine until 3 years down.
3 years, correct.
But I can sell the other one.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure.
Great
Supply
question.
and demand. Yeah, supply and demand. They want the state saying we want more supply because there's a demand there, and we're not
So
providing.
why are they limiting me for 3 years? on one of them.
So hold on,
Thanks.
Kevin, the parcel you're not living on, you can sell it immediately? Or you just wait for 3 years on that one as well?
No, you can sell that one immediately. Just the parcel that you're living on.
So hypothetically, somebody can take, let's say, a 20,000 square foot piece of land in Beverly Hills, build a 6,000 square foot house on the other 10,000 square feet, and sell it immediately after they build it, and still
Yes.
live there.
Yes.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's money right there. Because you can really build a real nice duplex. I mean,
Yeah, there's
wow.
opportunity. There's opportunity where these duplexes can. I know there's concern that, hey, you're destroying the residential neighborhood character, look and feel, but again, people that develop these parcels, they're living next door to it for 3 years, right? You don't want to live next to something that is unattractive. They're going to put some money to make it attractive and meet the neighborhood look and feel and the curb appeal of the neighborhood. So I know there's a lot of naysayers that don't like this SB9 program because they say it's going to bring the value of the single family neighborhoods down. But I don't agree with that. I think you have to have some belief in developers and private owners that they're going to put some beautification behind these projects.
But Kevin, the situation is that a lot of these houses, be it 5,000, 7,000, 10,000, I'm talking about the normal ones, not Beverly Hills flats. They are basically occupying, I'm not an architect, I don't know how to say this, but they're occupying the front of the lot. So there's room in the backyard to build something. I mean, imagine that you have a house on a 7,000, 8,000 square feet, and the house is basically, naturally they built it, so it would cover like 80% of the frontage of the house. Mm-hmm. So can I do not lot split across, but diagonal? I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like cut the triangle in half. I mean, the rectangle in half from the back.
So I believe there's a restriction when you do the lot split, you have to have a certain amount of frontage to the public road. So you can't, you do have to meet the subdivision map act standards of how much frontage that is. So the city would give you that minimum requirement. If it's 50 feet lot coverage, 10 feet, 20 feet, whatever it is, the city would give you that.
So in practicality, a lot of these houses, it may not make sense to do that.
Yeah, it may not work.
In practical.
Yeah, if it's largely in a hillside, or if it's has small frontage that would not be appropriate for 2 drive aisles. Yeah, this is not a one size fits all. It's going to be project specific.
I see. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the 1,200 square foot, what dimension are we talking about here? Just based on the minimum.
It's going to be the city's underlying zoning that's going to set the standard for the front lot coverage. So if it's City of Los Angeles, usually it's 50 feet they require. Mm-hmm. So there may be a requirement per City of LA that when you do a duplex, the frontage has to be at least 50 feet. And it's all going to be dependent on the local jurisdiction to make that call of the lot size frontage requirement.
But this is the catch here, Kevin, as I was saying, a 7,500 square feet lot is 50 by 150. So yeah. So almost all of these 7,500 feet lots are
not going to work. You need a larger lot. Yeah.
So you need at least a 50 frontage. Mm-hmm. I mean, 100 frontage, right? I mean,
and it's dependent on the local jurisdiction. I'm not sure what City of LA is going to agree to, but right. once they release their code requirement for SB9, we'll see what that frontage requirement is.
I see.
And once that information becomes available, I'll be happy to share with the team so you guys have the latest data.
Don't worry, we'll call upon you.
For sure.
Can you show one more time SB10?
Sure. So SB10 is a rezone without environmental review, up to 10 units. This is a voluntary action. it has to be within an urbanized area and near a transit center, with 1,000 feet near a major transit center like a bus, metro, any type of mass transit system. And this is a voluntary program, so cities don't have to abide by this program, unlike SB9. But the idea is that this will provide more density and rental opportunities near transit.
And you think that's going to come in effect starting January of next year?
January of next year, both SB9 and 10. Now, these cities have an opportunity to either agree with SB10 and make modifications per their own city standards. So as that becomes more readily available, I'll share some information on what these cities are going to be providing as the baseline conditions for SB9 and 10.
And that's SB9 also, beginning of the year.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Good question, Yelena. Yeah, definitely, Kevin. Good stuff. And looking forward to see exactly how it's going to evolve, right? From one end, and
Definitely.
then to see if they're gonna find a way to make it even more complicated. As you know, when you go to the small details, you understand that it's not just okay. Let's split every lot, build fourplex. It's a bit more. There's more into that, right? Not just because of the sizes, etc., the setbacks, etc. So you have to understand what it is. So
Yeah.
I mean, whoever on the call right now, whoever's going to watch afterwards, so you don't just tell people, oh yeah, you can do this and that. You have to understand what it is, and it's of course always the buyer due diligence to
Right.
Or the seller if they want to sell their lot based on whatever they think it might qualify for. So wait just a little bit longer to understand exactly what the implications and how. And let's see if SB10 is going to pass, and let's see where it's going to pass, etc.
Yeah, let's see what cities accept it.
Yeah. And Kevin, if you don't mind to show that slide with me, it's the slide deck I can share with the people. And if you don't mind just to go to the very last slide so people can see your information over there, and feel free to reach out to Kevin directly. I know that many of you have in the past, and is just a great resource and a real pro.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and feel free to reach out to me by email, phone. My contact information is there. I'm happy to discuss any certain properties or answer any specific questions you may have.
I have a question if you have time.
The only problem with Kevin is that he flakes out when he gets invited for dinner, but it's okay. We won't go against him on that one, Kevin.
Thanks, David. I do have a newborn, FYI, everybody. So I'm juggling a newborn at home.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now that's a valid excuse. That's
I apologize.
Congratulations.
Dinner, man.
Thank you.
David Yashar, nobody can keep up with you anyways.
Wait a minute.
Monty, only if you have a question, because we joined a bit later. If it's a new question, great. If not, you can watch the recording afterwards, because Kevin went through a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Monty?
Yeah, I'll ask a quick question. You can, if it's already answered, then I can watch the recording. So some of the HOAs have more restrictive rules than the local government and all that, right? So how does SB9, SB10, how does that interact with the local HOA rules if they're more restrictive?
So it does supersede local HOA as well. So the jurisdiction, the city and HOA are superseded by SB9. It's a state mandate that they must follow.
That's a great question.
So
does
even though
that
the
mean
HOA has local jurisdiction or local design features, they must adhere to the state program.
Wow. So does that mean you can build a 4-unit in Bel Air Crest?
So yeah, if Bel Air accepts or they have to accept SB9, but accepts these lot frontage conditions and items regarding to lot coverage setbacks, then you'll start seeing these type of unit types in Bel Air Crest or within the hillside.
Wow, this is like interruption.
But again, remember, there's underlying zoning in these hillside areas that they must meet, right? So There's lot coverage standards, setback standards. So depending on the buildable footprint of these lots, many of these lots may not qualify just from the standpoint of feasibility or lay of the land. But if you have the opportunity to take advantage of SB9 in these areas like Bella Crest, then yeah, you'll start to see these type of unit types in these areas.
Wow.
The reason I asked the question is in Bell Canyon, there are so many lawsuits for small changes to architectural committee rules and all that. And I don't know how this will play out in Bell Canyon and or maybe even Indian Hills for that matter.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Monty. And I'm dealing with a project, Monty, in similar, more urbanized area where the HOA is saying no to multifamily units within a single family zone. But the TOC program supersedes the local HOA jurisdiction, and the city, the HOA must adhere to the TOC program. Now, this is even at a higher level than TOC. This is coming from the state. So now the state is going to supersede both the city jurisdiction and the local HOA.
Wow.
If you look at the chat, guys, I put a flyer for the KW Commercial Social event, which will take place this coming Thursday, starting at 5 p.m. at this local development in West Hollywood, that they are just hosting us to show us around, etc. So you guys are welcome. And from there, we're gonna go to a nearby restaurant. They have like outdoor lounge to mingle. We have a great sponsor. Thank you, David Yashar, for the connection. And
Sure.
Whoever can make it, guys, just show up to the first one, second one, or first location, second location. We get to meet in person and interact.